I'm ready.
Good afternoon. My name is Court Johnson, and I'm VP of Growth at AtScale. Today, we have Dave Mariani, AtScale's Chief Strategy Officer, providing a demonstration of how the largest retailers in the world rely on AtScale to modernize their analytics infrastructure. For those new to AtScale, we're a virtual data warehouse. Our customers span across all major verticals and include the likes of JPMC, Wells Fargo, TD Bank, Toyota, Wayfair, the Home Depot, and Kohl's. In today's presentation, we're going to speak specifically of ways in which our retail customers rely on AtScale for their retail analytics initiatives. We'll cover how AtScale enables retailers to seamlessly adopt the cloud, alternate or accelerate their ability to go from store to SKU in seconds, provide one analytical platform for internal and external users like store managers and suppliers, deliver OLAP capability, measuring things like distinct customer accounts and using custom retail calendars, access data through a live connection with the BI tool of their choice. If you have specific questions, please enter them in the questions section of the webinar. If we don't have a chance to answer them on this demo, we'll make sure to follow up with you individually. So with that, Dave, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Court, and welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us today. It's going to be a whirlwind tour of what AtScale does. I'm going to start with a couple slides and then give you a detailed demo, including a demo against a 265 billion row data set, just so you can see how AtScale scales. First of all, like Court mentioned, we are a virtual data warehouse. That means we're going to connect your consumers, whether they're using BI or AI tools, to the data platforms, and whether those data platforms are in the cloud or whether they're on-prem. So AtScale virtualizes all that. So your business users, your data scientists don't need to know where the data is or even how it's stored. With AtScale, it all looks the same and it all operates at analytical speeds that your customers have come to expect. In retail, we do a number of things. First of all, it's we can help accelerate your migration to the cloud if you're choosing to do that. And the way we do that is that with our virtual layer, we don't have to disrupt your downstream users or have them retool the kinds of applications or tools that they're used to access the data. We have several examples of customers where we've migrated them to the cloud and all of their analytics consumers never knew the difference. We're talking about really dramatic performance improvements. Even with the new scale-out data warehouses in the cloud like Snowflake and BigQuery, when you get to the tens or hundreds of millions of rows, we stop performing really at BI speeds. We're going to allow you to drill and to get the same level of performance whether you're looking at the store or SKU, regardless of the granularity of data. We have lots of customers who use AtScale internally and externally. As a retailer, of course, you have suppliers, and you obviously have merchandisers and store managers dealing with inventory and product mix. We got both sides covered with the same platform. Many maybe perhaps different tools of access, but you can be assured you're going to get the same semantic layer and the same semantics across all. And we're talking about doing really complex analysis at scale, server side. So rather than moving the complex analysis that you need to do, whether it's your custom retail calendar, counting distinct customers, rather than doing that in your client tool, in your BI tool, you could do that server side with AtScale and know that everybody's speaking the same language. And we're talking about live connections here. No data extracts, no loading data into an analytical appliance. We do not move data, and that's what makes us truly different. Customers across a wide range of industries, especially in retail, what these customers have in common, that they're all looking to make a data transformation for their analytical stack. That may be from moving to a data warehouse on-prem to a data warehouse in the cloud, or it could be moving from a data warehouse to a data lake. In all those cases, those are very disruptive changes, and AtScale makes that seamless and makes that invisible to your downstream users. So all these customers got more flexibility, able to future-proof their information architecture with AtScale, and know that they're built for today and for the future. Customers like Rakuten moved from an OLAP cube with analysis services to a Cloudera warehouse and then to Snowflake, all without disrupting their hundreds of BI users. Companies like Kohl's, which had to deal with static analysis, with static dashboards, were able to get a complete self-service ad hoc access to the most granular data to run the business. Home Depot was able to move from a OLAP cube to a data lake and then to the cloud with Google BigQuery, all without disrupting their 3,500 users and also plugging in an additional 9,000 vendors and suppliers into their Google BigQuery warehouse, all through AtScale. And with Wayfair, we were able to give them what they needed, which is multi-dimensional access with AtScale with tools like Excel and BigQuery, all without, again, disrupting their business. This is how we make it all work. AtScale connects the consumers to the data. And we do that through several interfaces. And it's your choice, whether your tools speak SQL through JDBC or ODBC, or whether they speak multi-dimensional languages like MDX, like Excel does, or whether you have applications that want to speak REST. We got you all covered. You're going to get the same semantic layer because with AtScale, with Design Center, which you'll see today, we author what we call virtual cubes. Those virtual cubes get presented to the BI users or to the AI users, and they're all speaking the same language. And we do all that with a high-scale dimensional engine. We make that high-scale dimensional engine work server-side with what we call the adaptive cache, which we call intelligent aggregates. So we're going to create aggregations automatically using our own machine learning and machine learning algorithms that are based on the query activity that we're intercepting from your users. And we're going to make that work on any of your data platforms, whether they be relational, whether they be cloud-based or data lake-based, or whether they be the new data platforms in the cloud. And we're going to secure that data both at rest in the original platform where the data landed, and we'll add additional layers of security on top of that when it comes to row-level security, when it comes to object-level security, when it comes to what we call true delegation, the ability for your users to log in with single sign-on and be the same users who are executing queries on your raw data platforms. That means when you secure your data once, AtScale is going to respect and inherit that security throughout the stack. Very powerful. Given our financial services and our healthcare customers, AtScale has a very rich audit trail and very, very rich and deep security and integration, as you can imagine. So why are we talking about OLAP and dimensional analysis? Well, it really really, the business really requires this kinds of functionality, whether it's counting unique customers, looking at store versus region, looking at this year versus last year, especially with retail calendars and parallel periods. It all is multi-pass calculations. So if you didn't think you needed multi-dimensions anymore, think again. You're doing that, and you have to do that, but rather than doing it in the BI tool with data extracts, which doesn't scale and which doesn't foot to other tools that are being used, you can do all this once, server side at scale with AtScale, and for any BI tool or any custom application. So today, without further ado, I'm going to show you how we can actually define and publish a virtual cube. And I'm going to be acting as a data owner in this situation. Then I'll take my hat off as a data owner and I'll become a regular old business analyst, and I'll be the consumer of that virtual cube. And I'm going to consume that virtual cube with Tableau and Excel. Now, if we have time, I also want to show you what we've done with Snowflake on their sample TPC DS 100 terabyte sample data warehouse. I'm going to show how you can do this yourself with AtScale without having to purchase or move any data using Snowflake's excellent data sharing capability. Okay, without further ado, let's take off. First, a little bit of an orientation. This is what we call Design Center. Design Center is you can see here we have we call a canvas, which is where these are all our tables or files that we're creating relationships to. These relationships are indicated by these orange lines. What you see here on the right is a preview panel. This is what your customers, your BI users and AI users are going to see and interact with. This is the virtual cube view. So for example, I have customer attributes. You can see I have some attributes like first name, last name, and then I actually have hierarchies. City rolls into state, which rolls into country. And I have several hierarchies. I can see zip code running into counties and countries. So these are our measures and our dimensions. Now what we'll see in the BI tool is exactly what you see in the preview here. So in Tableau, you can see, for example, I have my internet sales cube. That's my internet sales cube. You can see my folders with my custom attributes, just like you saw right there in Design Center. So what you see is what you get. You define it once, you consume many. So let's go ahead and close this, and let's build this virtual cube from scratch right before your eyes. So let's go to our Sales Insights project where I had that internet sales cube, and let's create a new virtual cube. And today we're going to call it Sales. Okay, we have our new virtual cube. I'm going to click on it and enter our model. And for here, we have a blank canvas. So right now in our preview, we don't have any dimensions or measures yet. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my data sources panel here, where I have all my data sources, and those data sources can be from different platforms. You could have Hadoop here. In this case, I have Snowflake. I could have BigQuery. I can have Oracle, Teradata, you name it. Today, I'm going to go and I'm going to load some raw data from my web store, and I'm going to go and I'm going to grab it from my AtScale data Snowflake schema, and I'm going to look for my sales log table. So I'm going to pull that onto my canvas. Now, all this information here, gets read straight through JDBC. So you don't have to describe any of your raw assets. AtScale will automatically discover that for you. Okay, so now I have what we call a sales log data set. Let's go ahead and double click on it, and we're going to do a little bit of wrangling. So here's all our raw data. You can see that we have some key value pairs here. Snowflake is excellent at doing nested data types, and we'll show you how AtScale can model those. You can see we have some dates that are strings, some dates that are integers. With AtScale, I can do transformations right in place. So I can take, for example, that date string, which actually was an integer, and I can turn it into an actual date through a transformation like I'm doing here in this ship date key. So now what you see here is I converted this long data type right into an actual date. I can also add new calculations. I can add a new calculation, for example, if I want to calculate a sales tax, for example. And I can do that by writing a formula right here in our formula wizard. This formula wizard allows us to pass through any calculations right through the underlying data platform. That means if you're using Snowflake, you can use all the capabilities that Snowflake offers. If you're using Hadoop, you can use all those capabilities, including user-defined functions, and of course, all the different syntax of case statements and transformations and regexes. So now that I've actually created that calculation, I can see a preview here, and that now calculation is now shareable. There's my sales tax across all cubes that use this new sales log data set. So let's start defining our measures and our dimensions. Well, here's my sales tax, and I'm going to go ahead and pull it into my measures pane. And what you'll see here is I preview. There's my sales tax. That's what my user is going to see. Let's continue to build this out with some order quantities. I want to know how many items my customers ordered. Let's see what their basket was in terms of sales amount. Let's do something I could never do at Yahoo, which was count unique customers, because distinct counts at scale are very difficult, usually impossible, especially with large retail data at the SKU level. With AtScale, I can go ahead and do that, and I can do that at scale and don't have to worry about killing my underlying data platform. Okay, so now I have some nice metrics. Let's go and add some dimensions. So we'll do that by going to our library. AtScale allows me to reuse our data sets, and in this case, our dimensions. And I can reuse them across virtual cubes. So that means I can, for example, bring on to my canvas, let's bring on 3 dimensions here. My customer dimension, my product dimension, and my date dimension. Now, if I look at my customer dimension and double click that, I can see that my customer dimension includes also a geography dimension. So you can see I can have actually nested dimensions all encapsulated in a nice, easy to use interface. So now how do I relate these dimensions to my fact data or my raw data? Well, all I need to do is wire them up. So I can take my product key and connect it to my product dimension, and voila, I now have my product hierarchy and my product categories. And you can see I inherited the structure of that hierarchy. I can go ahead and now connect up my customer dimension by linking it up to the customer key. Now I've got all this juicy information here about my customers all for free. What about date dimensions? Well, I have an order date and I have a ship date. So I can go ahead and connect that up and do what we call role-playing dimensions. So now I can say order, and I could do the same thing with ship by connecting it up and give it a prefix. And what you'll notice over here in my date dimensions is that now I've inherited for order date, that date hierarchy, and the same thing for ship date. So now imagine your retail calendars that you can define once, lock down, and make sure that all users are using that retail calendar for the same data. Okay, what about that nested data we saw? Remember we had those key value pairs? So if I look at my, data set again in my wrangling view, what you can see is that we have this product info, which has key value pairs: color, size, weight, and style. So what would I need to do in traditional data processing tools and ETL? Well, of course, I would have to split those out and parse those with ETL code. But I'm not going to do that with AtScale because that would be moving data and that would be evil. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and click on that product info field, and AtScale has recognized it as a map field, and I'm going to go ahead and create a color virtual column. So now you see column, and now if I drag it into the dimension pane, I now have a degenerate dimension off of a virtual column. So I didn't have to parse that data and I didn't have to move it. Now I have color as a dimension that could be queried. And I also didn't have to create a dimension table. AtScale is going to do that all automatically. So let's go ahead and make this new virtual cube called sales available to my users to query. So now we're ready to go. I've published my virtual cube to my community, And now what we're going to do is we're going to connect that virtual cube first with Tableau and then Excel. So I'm going to log in using my, my single sign-on credentials. Again, AtScale uses true delegation. So you're going to know that your users are logging in, and we're going to respect that security that you've worked so hard to produce. So here's my virtual cube that you just saw we built. There's sales, here's my measures, and here's my dimensions with all their hierarchies and all their glory. We're not dealing with flat data anymore. Users love to have dimensions and hierarchies. So let's go and just run a live query, first on order quantity. That's how many things I've ordered, and let's look at how many items we've ordered by products. Now these are live queries against Snowflake. This is not a, the sales cube has never, virtual cube has never existed before this session. And we just wrote a live query against Snowflake. So remember, color was that key value pair. Well, there's my distribution of products by color. And of course, a lot of my products don't have color. Those are nulls. Let's look at it and do a drill down by my date dimensions. Remember my role-playing dimensions? There's that order date. And now I see it by year. Let's go ahead and keep 2008 and drill down by year to quarter to month. All very quick and all instant and all done live. So what about not just Tableau, but what about Excel? Well, let's go and let's load up Excel. Excel is the most popular BI tool on the planet. And Excel is on everybody's desktop. So what that means is that anybody with Excel on their desktop can be an AtScale querier, an AtScale analyzer. And that means there's no additional software to install on those desktops because AtScale doesn't have drivers. AtScale uses and adopts the built-in connections that come with your tools, including, in Excel's case, Analysis Services Connector. So that's not anything that comes and ships with Excel out of the box. So now I'm going to log into my virtual cube. I'm going to choose my Sales Insights project and my Sales virtual cube. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create, in this case, a live pivot table and pivot chart using Excel. So there's my same semantic layer that you just saw in Tableau, but now you're seeing how it looks in Excel. And there is a live query that you just saw me run with order quantity by color. This time, of course, I'm doing it through Excel, and this is all happening through MDX. So let's go back to Design Center, and let's see what happens behind the scenes. Well, let's go back to our queries, and what we just saw here is our query log. AtScale can show you what the life of a query is. You can notice that last query has a lightning bolt. You saw the color by order quantity, and it took less than a second. Well, let's go back in time. You can see, for example, that we did our first color query in Tableau. So what did that look like? Tableau generated this query that we intercepted. We fooled Tableau into thinking there was a table called sales and a schema called Sales Insights. And then we rewrote the query that your users didn't have to rewrite, and we wrote the query to break out the data. You notice that we didn't use any aggregate yet because that's the first time we ever saw that query pattern. But then let's now go up to our MDX query we just ran. In Excel, just ran a query against sales, and sales, it looks like a sales cube to Excel. The outbound queries, though, there's actually two outbound queries, one for the data, the body data, and one for the total data. And for those queries, you can see that AtScale automatically, in adaptive cache, already saw that it would be advantageous to create an aggregate on that query pattern. And if I look at that definition of that instance there, you can see that I have one row in that aggregate. AtScale now is going to keep these aggregates up to date with your underlying data. And that means we're going to make Snowflake even faster because we're going to make it work not as hard. And that's how you really get the performance that your users require. So what about changes and agility? let's go back into our sales cube, and let's say, for example, that now I needed to look at my product info by style, by product style. I'm going to go ahead and do this by creating a new style virtual column, making it another dimension. And all I need to do now is publish that virtual cube again. Come back to my Tableau view. Let's look at that. I'll collapse these so you can see this. Now see, you have color. These are my dimensions. Now watch when I just hit refresh right here. Wait for it. Wait for it. There's style. There's a new dimension that I just added to my virtual cube. And now I just ran a query with style. I'll exclude all the nulls and color. When I was at Yahoo, running data and analytics for Yahoo would have taken me 6 weeks to do. Because of all the downstream things I would have to do with creating new ETL code on my Hadoop cluster, creating and modifying my schema in my Oracle data warehouse, and then modifying and rebuilding my analysis services cube, which takes 7 days before I could see any results. I just did that in about 7 seconds. Okay, that's all interesting and cool, but you guys are probably saying, hey, you guys are just working with small data. That's why it's so fast. So what I'm going to show you next is what you can do yourself. If you're a Snowflake customer or trying Snowflake, you can see there's a Snowflake sample data. In the Snowflake sample data, which they implement as a share, they actually have a TPC DS 100 terabyte instance. That's 265 billion rows of raw data. So what I did in AtScale is I actually built a model on that. And you can, if I click on my store and web sales analysis, there you have it. There's my model on TPC DS, all done within a virtual cube. So now let's go and query that cube live by connecting to it through Tableau. And let me show you just how fast Snowflake and AtScale can be on 265 billion rows of atomic data. So let's log in. We're running out of time, so this better be fast. Here's all my rich metadata from my TPC DS data source. Let's first figure out how many rows we're dealing with. There's our 265 billion rows. Great. What about the number of items that we've sold in this particular warehouse? We sold 13 trillion. That's all live queries you're seeing there. Okay, so let's go look at that by some dimensions and do some live ad hoc queries. This is what our retail customers love. They love to, for example, to see what I've sold by year, for example. And then see, for example, not just based on time, but then look at my, my product attributes and my product dimension, and look at my product categories and see what I sold by product categories. And there's my product categories by year. Let's do a switch here. And let's look at, for example, my product categories, and let's zoom in on sports and keep sports. Now I have my sports categories. Well, what about, let's look then at my product classes within sports. There you go, all instantaneous, all done on literally trillions of items. Okay, let's look at a particular category like golf. And now let's go and look at some of my customer demographics that we've had and we collected. And let's look and see if by income band, if only rich people play golf. So you could see what I was able to do there. Now, of course, this is all generated data because it's TPC DS through Snowflake. And so it's not actual data. But you can see what it would be and imagine what it would be with your actual data. And you can see, for example, I just looked at 84 billion items of data for my product of sports and my class of golf. So there you have it, and I'll send it back to you, Court. There is AtScale working without any data movement on a data set in Snowflake, which we created, which we accessed in place without having to create any data movement in any ETL, all done virtually and all done at the speed of thought.
Thanks, Dave. That was a fantastic demo. We do have a couple of questions. I think we have time for one. So the question is, Snowflake and BigQuery have their own caching layers. So why do we need AtScale for performance?
That's a great question. So, and you saw all those queries were all done in literally an instance. And I could see, for example, that last query was done in 558 milliseconds. Well, if I see the magic behind that, that actually was using one of our AtScale aggregates that we're smart enough to build. Now, what that would have done if I would have actually hit that query and hit that query without an AtScale adaptive cache, that query would have taken about 14 to 16 minutes to run. So each query, 14 to 16 minutes versus a query that was 558 milliseconds. That's why you need AtScale.
Perfect. All right, Dave. Well, thank you. And I want to thank everyone for taking the time to learn more about AtScale today. If you have additional questions, again, please reach out. Feel free to reach out to us directly through the AtScale website, or you can use the email alias hi@atscale.com. You can join us for our next demo, which we'll be sending out very soon. And stay tuned for an update on that one, and we'll look forward to seeing you guys very soon. Thank you.